Recently, Ubiquiti released a new switch. It's called USW-Flex-XG. It's a very special switch and it's different than Ubiquiti's rack mount 10 gigabit switch. I purchased it right after it's available. Okay, there are a lot of stuff inside the small box. Of course, the switch itself, super happy considering the size, and power adapter, wall mount template, wall mount, and some screws. Okay, because I won't mount it on the wall, so let me put this away. So we will focus on these two different parts. Let's discuss in what situation you want to use it and how to use it and what's the experience. USW series has 3 flex switches. I happen to have all 3 of them. Let's compare them side by side. So the smallest one is called a USW-Flex Mini, and it has a PoE uplink and 4 non-PoE gigabit ports. It comes with a power adapter. If you don't want to power it with PoE, you have this option. And this one is called USW Flex. It can be powered by PoE only. So you either use injector or you have a PoE uplink. And then all the other ports, they are PoE ports. I like it very much, by the way. And this is today's new switch we are going to focus on. You can, if you hold them together, you can feel the weight difference. And the power adapter here is much more beefier than the mini one, because even though they are both 5 volts, I believe, but the bigger one is 5A and this one is only 1 ampere. So that's a huge difference, because apparently they have different power requirement. Okay, so let's remove these two. Let's focus on today's new switch. When people first see the $299 price tag, many people will think about the Microtech very popular $130 switch. If you compare them, they are very similar. They both have one PoE-in, which is 1 gigabit, and 4 10 gigabit ports. Right? Big difference is Ubiquiti has 4 RJ45 already, and the Microtech one has 4 SFP plus ports. The difference is advantage and disadvantage at the same time for Microtech. The reason is I own this Microtech for a short period. To be honest with you, I didn't like it very much for 2 reasons. First, the build quality cannot be compared with the Ubiquiti one at all, and it's very small, very light. The other problem is the thermal. Without using any module, the switch is already super hot. So if you plug 4 RJ45 modules, I don't know how long this switch will last. But the Ubiquiti one, even you put all the 4 RJ45 with cables, it's not very hot at all. So it's very heavy, very well built, and the temperature is behaving so nice. But you know what? At the same time, the Microtech one has 4 SFP plus. It's more flexible. So you can use fiber cable, you can use stack, or you can use RJ45, right? Just put different modules. Many people will complain the $299 price tag for UniFi. Think about it. If you buy this switch from Amazon now, today, and add 4 RJ45 modules, depending on the brands, the price may be from $40 to $70. So let's say it's $50 each. Then plus $200, you end up with a switch plus 4 modules, which is $336 already, even more expensive than the Ubiquiti. I don't think $299 is too steep. Now let's test the typical use case for this switch. Normally you don't use it in your server room. You use it in a separate room. Then you don't have 10 gigabit connection to your server room. You only have a 1 gigabit. If you are lucky, the link is PoE powered. If not, it's not big deal because this switch does come with a power adapter, right? So now let's test this typical scenario. So as you can see, I have 4 different colored cables. The first one, I plug it in the uplink. So this is my 1 gigabit uplink. And now I'm powering it up with the power adapter. And this red cable is not PoE powered at all. And this black one is the Synology NAS. It does have a 10 gigabit NIC. I'm connecting it using the yellow cable. I plug it into the first 10 gigabit port. And here the green cable, I connect it with my laptop. And because my laptop doesn't have NIC RJ45 port at all, I use a 2.5 gigabit adapter. So this green one is 2.5 gigabit. And the blue one is connected with my desktop. I don't show the desktop in the video, but it is connected using the blue cable. So this one is 10 gigabit. I'm using the adapter here. So red one, 1 gigabit, yellow one, 10 gigabit, connected with my NAS. Green one, 2.5 gigabit, blue one, 10 gigabit. Okay, now let's see what the UniFi controller is showing. Let's go to UniFi controller. Let me find the USW-Flex-XG. And here you can see the first part is the green one. It's 1 gigabit. It's not PoE powered at this moment. And the first 10 gigabit, it is 10 now. And the second one is not plugged in. And the third one is light blue, which is 2.5 gigabit. And the last one is 10 gigabit. So far so good. Now let's see what's the network. First, let's test from my desktop computer. If I write or read data using the Synology NAS, what's the speed? It's a real world testing. It's not a purely network testing. And I already selected the Synology NAS share drive as the target. Let's start. So the write speed is 600 something megabytes, not saturate the 10 gigabit, but it's good enough. And the read is 800 or 900 something. Yeah, so the speed is pretty good. It's enough to work on 4K video processing. Laptop is connected using 2.5 gigabit connection, and this desktop is using 10 gigabit. I already started the iPerf server on the laptop. Now let me run the iPerf client from this desktop to see what's the network speed. Okay, so it's 2.35, close to 2.5. Within the local room, just by using this single switch, I can achieve almost saturated speed, which is 2.5 gigabit in this case. So it's pretty good. Now let me try to run the iPerf, but this time I'm going to connect to a server which is in another room. So this time the network traffic has to go via the uplink, which is the weak link, which is only 1 gigabit, right? So now let me write that server is running a TrueNAS server. I already started the iPerf server. Let me run against it. See, it's only close to 1 gigabit. So this is the weak link. Let's summarize this use case. Normally, that's the intended use case. At least that's my understanding. So people buy this small high-speed switch and then use it on the desktop, maybe in the office or in the let's say bedroom, and you don't really care about the high-speed uplink. You only want to use your computer and maybe some NAS server inside the same room, and you want to have high speed and it can still connect to other room or your server room, but only with 1 gigabit. But it doesn't work for me because I really need the 10 gigabit uplink. So now let me try the second use case. This is the second use case which I want to try. In fact, that's the one I want to use it. So I put a UniFi aggregation switch here, and let's assume this one belongs to the server room. So it's not in your current room, and you do want to use the 10 gigabit connection as a uplink. So this is what I'm doing. I connect the red cable to the aggregation switch, and in this part I plug it into the first 10 gigabit. So I'm not using the 1 gigabit PoE uplink. So basically this one is wasted in this use case. So I want to use the first one as the uplink, but I'm not sure whether it will work because I don't see it mentioned anywhere on Ubiquiti's website. So let me try it. And for other three ports, they are the same. Yellow one connect to the Synology NAS 10 gigabit, and the green one connect to my laptop 2.5 gigabit, and the blue one connect to my desktop computer, which is also 10 gigabit. Okay, so now let me see whether I can see it in my UniFi controller and whether it works as what I expect. Let me go to UniFi controller to see how it shows there. So that's original 1 gigabit uplink is showing gray. 10 gigabit uplink is supported. As you can see here, there's a special icon here. It means it's uplink. Now let me test the uplink speed. First use the 2.5 gigabit laptop. Okay, so the speed looks good. It's 2.35. Yep, it's used up all the bandwidth. Let me test the 10 gigabit network's uplink speed using the desktop. It's only about 8 gigabit. Doesn't saturate the 10 gigabit upper limit. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I'm using a Thunderbolt adapter. I may need to figure it out later, but at least it proves it is using a 10 gigabit uplink. We have already tested the two typical scenarios. First one, use this 1 gigabit PoE uplink. The second scenario, using one of the 10 gigabit as uplink and have this one wasted. So far so good, but if you are like me, you want to use all the available features if that's something you purchased, right? So then I don't like I waste this one, I want to use it. Now let me do some testing, because Ubiquiti's website doesn't say whether this one can be used as a normal part or it can be only uplink, but let me test it. Here you can see a normal USW-Flex Mini, and now I'm powering it using a cable. So let me find a network cable. Okay, connect this two. Then let me go to UniFi controller to see whether this small switch is recognized. This is the UniFi controller. I'm so happy now because the 1 gigabit part is showing alright, and it is showing the correct speed, and the original blue one, the 10 gigabit one, is still showing uplink. It's working perfectly as expected. If I use it in this scenario, I won't waste a single part. Even for this one, I can use it as a normal 1 gigabit part. I should have finished this video taking already, but I'm still not 100% satisfied. The reason is this USW-Flex-XG comes with a PoE-in part, and I really don't want to show this power cable and the a little bit bulky power adapter. So I want to still power it using PoE. At the same time, I want to have 10 gigabit uplink. To put it the other way, I want this link to be a normal part plus a PoE-in part. So let me see whether I can achieve it. So this is a small UniFi PoE switch. Let me use it as a testing device. Now this is the PoE-in part. Let me power it using the PoE switch. Okay, but I still want to have some 1 gigabit part, right? Now I have this PoE switch. I can use this one, another PoE part, to power this small USW-Flex Mini. So now if you see this connection, this scenario, you can see I suppose this switch get the uplink from the 10 gigabit one as before, but now I expect it to be powered by this PoE, and so this one should be downlink instead of uplink, but I still expect it to be to carry the PoE capability. Now you still see the light because I am still having this power cable plugged in. Let me try to remove it. Perfect. So it's still powered. It's still powered by this PoE switch. And then let me remove this power cable. Yeah, it is still powered. Okay, so now this is a very clean setup, right? So this switch get the 10 gigabit uplink and 3 available 10 gigabit as normal port, and it has a 1 gigabit as a normal port, and is powered by PoE. So if you use this type of setup on your desk, I believe it can achieve many different requirements. It should be very flexible. Let me summarize my thoughts. First, about price. Is it expensive? I wouldn't say it's cheap, but I can understand why the price is almost $300, considering the build quality and if you compare to other brands. So whether it's like the name suggests, whether it's flexible, yes, it is flexible. As I tested, you can use it as Ubiquiti intends for you to use, which is you use the 1 gigabit as uplink as a PoE-in, then you use this for 10 gigabits on your desk and to meet your local room requirements, right? Or as I tested in my way, I use one of the 10 gigabits as uplink, and then I can still power it using PoE, and I get an extra 1 gigabit port, right? And it's very flexible. So the last thing, whether I have any complaints, yes, I do. In fact, I wish it has a SFP plus port, because if it has one, I won't waste one of the 4 10 gigabit ports. I will get the 10 gigabit uplink. But there must be a reason why Ubiquiti design or produce the switch in this way. If you consider the Microtech one, it has a very similar ports layout. Why? I believe it has something to do with the internal chip selection, right? And of course, another wish is, why not make this one PoE and 10 gigabit, right? But you know what? I even don't know whether it's a thing. I know Ubiquiti has 2.5 gigabit and PoE plus port in some switch, but I've never heard of 10 gigabit and PoE plus port.